So, Helena and Dads, thank you for doing this. You've probably heard the expression daddy's little girl, and I'm wondering, Helena, what it's like to be two daddy's little girl.
Um, it's it's nice, and I like having. Uh, they're very loving and caring family, and I'm grateful for them.
Yeah, I can really tell that just even from a distance. And you have your grandmother, so you can ask questions about female bodies or something like that, right?
Yes.
So, how did you three come together? What brought you together as a family?
So when Jeff and I first started dating, we talked about family quite early on, actually, and we moved to Alabama for a little bit, and this was years before Helena was born, 6 years, 5 6 years, and so the conversations about forming a family was early, and we even came up with a name and got a I don't know, we have a Christmas ornament that's an H, predating Helena by a few years.
Wow.
Yeah, so she really was started with a conversation, then a plan, and I imagine as similar to how it happens for other adoptive families. We started exploring the idea, and we had couple friends who were adoptive families who formed adoptive families, and so we kind of followed in their footsteps. Got connected with an agency in Pasadena, and that's how it started. We just went through just like any other family, exploring international adoptions and domestic adoptions, got more information and took classes, formed our portfolio, which was this thick. and, but it was comforting too, Gail, because the process was all spelled out. It was divided in chapters or little tabs, and we followed them, and it was about 9 months, sure enough, from the time we started exploring and connecting with the adoption agency to when Helen was born, and we were a family like 9 months later.
That
So
is beautiful.
yeah,
So you were together since Helena was born, just about.
yes. So we were there. Helena was born. That was an interesting day. I was working. I was a flight attendant at the time, and I was on a flight somewhere. But Jeff was in town with Helena's birth mother, and got the call early. It was Helena actually arrived 2 months early. So yeah, so that was a whole nother experience, adventure. Jeff?
Yeah, Helen was born, early and had a lot of medical issues in the beginning of her life for the first year. And so, it's hard to believe that she's going to start eighth grade, that she's 13 years old. And we are just a family that relishes every moment of being a family and of parenting.
So when were you born, Helena? I'm interested in your astrological sign.
Well, I was born on June 4th, 2009, in Long Beach, California. I'm currently 13 years old. It is important to know that I was a 27-week birth and had lots of medical issues when I was born. This is important because it impacts my activism and my scholarship in my later life. I was in the NICU for over 2 months and had heart surgery at 10 days old. I had brain bleeds and oxygen and was on oxygen and had a heart monitor for my first full year of life.
You probably don't have any conscious memories of that, but there's unconscious patterns that were set up?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yes,
Yeah. No.
the stories she's heard from us,
The
and the
stories.
pictures, lots of pictures.
But your sign, though, before we go on to the next question, what's your sign?
Oh, I'm Gemini.
Guess what I am?
Oh,
We rule. I'm June 12th, and I was born in LA, Hollywood.
Oh,
Okay.
all three of us are June, but we're both Cancers, and she's Gemini. Yeah.
Yes. Cancer. So, and we get along okay.
yeah.
Yeah, because they're all kind of light. I mean, they're not like bulls or rams or something like that. I can get that. So, Helena, speaking of places, you've been London, Paris, Sydney, Amsterdam, U.S. cities. If you weren't living in LA, where were you attracted to? Where you thought, whoa, I could picture myself living here from all your travels?
I would pick Amsterdam, and because of Amsterdam, some of my favorite things were the boats in the river and the Anne Frank Museum and some of the other places.
How about the bicycles everywhere? I mean, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it. You see old ladies and old men and little kids, everybody's on their bike.
Yeah.
Have you been, Gail?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, I love it.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Absolutely.
So for this book, I'm interested in how we learn how to. Some people like Judith Butler say gender is a performance. So it's something that we learn. So I'm wondering, Helena, what you've learned from family, school, friends, peers, media about what it is to be, let's say, a good woman, a good young woman.
Well, from media, we do love media as a family and entertainment in my home, and I hope that I get into that field myself. But here's the thing. My parents have always talked to me about every show we watch. I can remember having conversations about race as far back as My Little Pony, because the more evil characters like Nightmare Moon were dark, and good characters like Princess Celestia were white.
Oh.
TV and race have always been a part of our conversations. The same is true about the things like emotional work. My dad has showed me where the girls in my shows were always having to do the emotional work and the boys were clueless. Yeah. So we stopped the shows and talk about how toxic that was. Body shaming is big in the media, and we talk about that a lot. So we love media, but we find that we have to talk about it all the time because it nearly always gets things wrong.
My grandson just turned 12, so I've seen a lot of kids media recently, and what surprises me is how mean they are to each other. They're always fighting or killing each other or putting each other down. It's like conflict most of the time, and that makes me sad. So the really violent ones I wouldn't let him watch. He goes, "Oh ma, come on." They're all like that. I don't know what the deal is. Why we're teaching kids that life is just conflict. Do you agree with that or not?
I do agree with that because even though it is fiction, it's just it's I don't know
Yeah, it drums the thoughts and impressions and emotions into your head if you're watching it 8 hours a day or however much is average. My grandson just started the junior high in 7th grade, and he said that the 8th graders, and they did this when I was in school, they're mean to them. Like, his name is Soren, so they go, "Oh, we're going to set you Soren. And I know when I started junior high, they said, oh, the older kids will put you in a trash can. And I was really surprised that that kind of hazing or being mean to the new kids still goes on. Is that, or you haven't really did you start junior high or middle school in 7th grade?
Uh, I started in 6th grade.
Okay, so you know the ropes.
Yeah. From my friends, I feel included and welcome, but from my classmates, where I have a few friends, I've felt excluded and have been bullied. I've become friends with a lot of boys, and what I'm learning is that even now among my peers, girls are usually friends with girls and boys. But I don't really. I kind of had a different experience with older kids above my grade, like with 8th graders last year. They were kind, but I can see how Soren was bullied by those older kids, because it is common too.
Actually, one of the things Helena's leading this year is she just pitched an anti-bullying campaign to her school administration, and they liked it, and they're going to implement it this year. She'll be the lead on that.
Helena, how does that work? I know there's a lot of talk about bullying. A lot of schools realize it's a problem. Some of them set up peer group, like counseling support groups. They have posters and flyers up. But what's your approach to dealing with bullying?
My approach to dealing with bullying is definitely telling a caring adult, and definitely telling your parents and talking to them about it. And also another way is to hang out with people who welcome you and care about you, and not keep just like maybe trying to stay away from the bullies, because it does make it hard, and even though they do keep like bullying you, just try to stay away from them and try to join another group who is kind to you.
Yeah, she's basing it mainly around two national organizations. One is out of the Southern Poverty Law Center and their Learning Justice team, and it's called Mix It Up, and you can find it at mixitup.org. And it's just about getting kids to cross social boundaries at lunch, sit at a different lunch table.
That's so rare.
Right, and then the second campaign is based on a middle school novel by James Howe called The Misfits, and it's you can find that campaign is through the Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, and it's called NoNameCallingWeek.org. And those two campaigns are going to be the kind of the foundation of their anti-bullying campaign, and it really is like just exactly what our daughter explained. It's really about crossing social boundaries and getting kids to interact with each other. And that's
what I wanted to add was that first strategy of mixing it up was something that Helena deployed successfully in 7th grade, even before knowing about that program. Unlike Soren's experience with older kids, Helena, just kind of took the initiative to meet a whole table of 8th graders when she was in 7th grade, and kind of decided that this might be a good group for her, and so border crossed, and I mean, imagine the courage, right?
That takes guts. A lot of overs.
And they were all boys.
And this is also in the background of just coming off of a lockdown from pandemic. So you're already like at a deficit, like not being social for about a year, and so here she was just taking that step. And it worked beautifully. So it set her up for a really successful year with a lunch table that included her, and so that's why we decided as a family to follow it up this year with a program for the school.
At my grandson's school, they had a bench where you could go and sit if you wanted someone to join you. I've forgotten what they called it, but
I think we call it
the buddy bench.
the
buddy bench. Yeah. Helena, is the bullying mostly verbal, or is like I've read studies that a lot of girls in secondary school get bumped, pinched, patted, harassed physical ways by boys in secondary school, and I wondered what's the most common form of bullying that you've seen.
I would say verbal, but also like nonverbal, like
excluding.
yeah, but just maybe with your body language too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, show me, what do you mean with body language?
Maybe ignoring the person, or just like huddling up in a group and like blocking them out.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty direct. So studies show that, especially with girls, but with adolescent boys too, big increase anxiety, depression, especially anxiety. Some people, like Jean Twenge, San Diego State, attribute it mainly to social media. I don't agree with her and her emphasis, but I wondered what you think in terms of social media, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. What kind of effect do you see that has on your peers and you?
Well, it does affect people, especially like the body images and body shaming, and just sometimes also making mistakes on social media, like not knowing that this post was like not something you should say or do, or this video, and cyberbullying too, of course. And there was also a sexting scandal in my class in last year, and and that was, I don't know.
Was that nude pictures, or sharing nude pictures or something like that?
Yeah. And
that's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah. And also one of my peers put up something about a teacher and how she wished that he was dead. And that like shocked me. But then she deleted it because I think her parents.
Hello. So, do you agree that anxiety is a problem for young people? Do you see that if you're in your peers or not?
It is a problem because also the pandemic didn't help with that, and I spent the last part of 5th grade in lockdown, all of 6th grade, and a small part of 7th grade too. And besides the pandemic, like I said, we watch a lot of TV, and there are certainly all kinds of messages on shows that are bad for girls and everyone. I follow Gina Davis Institute on gender media, and I read and am a reporter for the New Moon Girls magazine, a preteen girl power magazine, and I'm on the blog team for the Feminist Focus. And the teen blog site for girls are an international.
Excuse me, is that different than the teen magazine, or is it affiliated with it?
Different.
The New Moon.
Different. New Moon Girl magazine is one entity, and then her work with Girls Learn International is through the Feminist Majority Foundation in Los Angeles.
Got it.
And so she just became one of the, I think, 6 girls around the world that has been invited to be one of the bloggers.
Wow. That's a big honor, big responsibility.
Yeah.
What have you blogged about so far, or have you started blogging for Girls Learn?
No, she does her first pitches. They just had their training, and she did her first pitch the first Thursday in September. She'll do her first
You
pitches.
start soon, right? You start in the fall. Yeah.
But they have asked her to write about a bullying situation that she had last year that they're aware of. She also just won a major award, 16 under 16, about children in STEM. And they've asked her to do a profile of the girls, the young girls in STEM. So she has several ideas that she's putting together just now to pitch.
Mm-hmm. Like what's percolating in that big brain of yours, Helena, for a pitch?
Feminist Flakes.
Oh yeah, my feminist flakes, and
Tell about that art project.
We in art we're like, I guess, designing a cereal box, and we were painting it, and so like Andy Warhol, and so I decided to do something like feminist flakes, and like I guess it's a cereal thing, kind of based thing.
Based on Kellogg's cornflakes.
Yeah.
How much did you make your cereal worth? You remember 73 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
So it's about the gender wage gap. She did a Andy Warhol pop culture
For the cereal box.
Right.
Got it. This was in like an art class in school?
Yeah.
I got it. So how much pressure do you think there really is because of social media? I've got to look like this. Oh, these people went to this party. I wasn't invited. They're in. I'm out. I got this many likes. This person got that many likes. Do you think that is impactful or not? Or like how big a deal is all that media appearance, popularity, influence?
That is very impactful.
Okay.
For a lot of people. Yeah. And certainly the way you're supposed to dress, or you dress, or how you act, or definitely how many likes you get, or if you're invited to this party or not invited.
I just want to give some context though, Gail. So Helena just turned 13, and for a lot of the social media platforms, 13 is the minimum. So, she turned 13 a couple months ago, even though, a lot of social media now, from the last couple of months over the summer, it's still fairly new. So, and the accounts are moderated, by her parents, co-moderated. So that, we see enough, don't we?
Yeah, and I do like having social media a lot, like to see what the people I do follow are doing, and like what's new, and like what my friends are doing. But I try to not open up social media every day, because it is kind of a bad habit that I have, and so yeah, I'm kind of thinking of deleting it on my phone and checking in with my parents to do it, because I think it's kind of a little bit too much for me now.
Mm.
Yeah, and that's probably just because we're on the stricter side of lockdown in our home, because we had pretty great losses during the pandemic, and so we don't really get out much, and so she's using social media. It's brand new. When school starts in next week, there's really not much time for it, because we keep a fairly busy schedule as well.
Yeah, just blogging could keep you busy. So let me tell you what my angle is on anxiety and depression. It's that there's a lot more pressure on young people than there used to be. So the pressure is take AP classes, make your resume look great for college, get into a really good college. You're going to graduate maybe with $35,000 in debt, so you've got to get a really good job to pay for that debt. You've got to, as a woman, as a girl, you've got to do the academic stuff. You should do the athletic stuff, like you do martial arts, you do your violin. You should look this way and have this kind of connection with your friends. I mean, to me, that's a hell of a lot. Plus, teenagers don't get enough sleep, and that is depressing just in itself. No one talks very much about the sleep factor, but all the teens and I talk to in high school, they're lucky if they go to bed at midnight because they've got homework and jobs and extracurriculars. So does that resonate with you, or maybe you're not quite old enough to feel all those pressures?
I do resonate with it because it is important how much sleep you get and like the amount of homework. And I mean, it is stressful about how much homework I get, but I just want to finish it. And so, yeah.
Yeah. We're just now starting the application process for high school. It's way harder than what we had to do for college.
What do you mean application for high school?
We have a school choice here in Long Beach. And so you kind of do an application process for which high school you want to get into. Really, Gail, it is like more strenuous than what I went through applying to college. So those pressures are there. And you all have been told your whole education career that your grades in 6th and 7th grade really matter because those are what you get into high school.
Yeah, that is a pressure too. I mean, it's if you tell someone that like when they first go into middle school, that's definitely gonna put pressure on them. But I mean, it is important to know as well that your grades in those grade levels matter for high school.
Yeah, I think a lot of our job recently as parents has been to mitigate some of that pressure for her, by way of just really talking about it. Let's talk about how what the real expectations are. You've got expectations kind of foisted on you from social media and school and stuff. So we get to kind of deconstruct it at home a little bit, and I think that's part of our moderating social media, not to be strict necessarily, but to kind of monitor what's accurate and what's overblown, and because we are very aware of our anxiety levels as it is, our depression levels.
Helena never saw her grades in elementary school. We never really showed them to her because we were not grade focused. In her school, in 6th grade, one of the things they required middle school kids to do is to access their online grades, and as a strategy of empowering them to take on the responsibility of their academic life. So it was the first time Helena had really seen her grades when she was in 6th grade. And so it's been an interesting, we just keep telling her that we're interested in her love of learning, in her disposition, and in those things. And, as you saw, because of her, our advocacy around learning disabilities, we are in constant conversation as parent advocates to help mediate some of that stress as well. Mm-hmm. But it's pretty stressful. I agree with you, Gail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's much more stressful than when we were growing up, that's for sure. Do you want to, you're an advocate for people with disabilities. Do you want to say a word, Helena, about your own personal experiences?
Yes. I was in the summer last year, I think, I went to, what was it called?
She got the full battery of psychoeducational testing for learning disabilities. She had done that in 2nd grade and had been diagnosed with a visual processing disorder and a working memory disorder. So this was why she wanted you to know up front that she had some medical issues in the beginning of her life that impacted her learning.
What does that mean? The visual part. When you see something, do you see it differently than me?
It's like, well, the doctor said, like, I can never play a sport with a ball. And
it had to do with blurring her
Yeah.
vision and the musculature of her eye. And so she had to have some intense, like 16 weeks of vision therapy to train her eye to read. She would read and then she'd skip several lines.
Ah,
And so, but it was mostly, she would see it and it would just blur.
ah.
So that has resolved itself after that vision
Oh,
therapy.
good.
But the working memory stuff just means that
it's hard to process, like, when a teacher goes fast, or if I'm working in groups. That's hard, especially working in groups, because kind of tend to go fast, and then it kind of frustrates me a lot.
Does it help to take notes? To like write
It-
down the instructions and write down like little keywords?
It does, but yes, it does, and it just helps sometimes if the teacher goes slow, which my science teacher always checks in with me with notes.
yeah, working memory is probably not something that will ever go away. And so she'll always have that. It just means that we have to do a lot of gentle overteaching and lots of notes, maybe put visuals with those notes. And then this past, that was second grade. And then this past summer, you were diagnosed with a new one, right?
ADHD or ADD.
Yeah, ADHD. So, and that just means more accommodations, and so we have to work with schools to, make sure she gets time and a half for testing and those kinds of things. And a lot of teachers are, a lot of general education teachers aren't really equipped to work with children with special needs. So that's been a lot of advocacy, and she did a PSA on disability justice for her school, for her feminist club. That was the first thing she did, and that was to get more conversations going in her school about, because lots of kids, I mean, maybe 1 in 20 kids have disabilities of some kind, and so that means in a class of 20, there's 19 chances for kids to learn, about differences. And a lot of people don't share about those differences because they have shame around it. And so we take out the shame here in this home. And you now refer to your learning disabilities as what?
My superpowers.
That's true, because there's really a lot of talented people with ADD and ADHD, because it gives you kind of a creative way to see things, and there's an intense processing going all the time that can be really creative.
I just read recently there was an article, I think in the last 2 days actually, that Greta Thunberg just referred to her autism as a superpower. So
Yeah.
oh, look at that. That was
Because she can focus so
Right?
Yeah.
single-mindedly, yeah, and she doesn't care if people are chatting around her and criticizing around her.
That has a lot to do, Gail, with Helena's kind of activism and scholarship, because our family platform really then is to raise expectations, not to lower expectations. And so all of the stuff that you see that she's done on her website, that's all outside of school. Rarely any of that is done inside or recognized inside of school. And so it's all about increasing, elevating expectations and networking and giving her opportunities to speak. And she has just excelled in it. She's just really a gifted speaker when she presents.
And I think it's important that people with all these differences and intersectional identities, that they know that they have support with them, like I do with my parents and my teachers.
Yeah, that makes all the difference in the world, that's for sure. Um, you talk to yourself about yourself as being a nerd. What does that mean?
Um, well, we're all nerds in my family. For me, that means like uh, loving science fiction, uh, being really creative, writing, reading a lot, and I don't know, just
I can't find that. We took notes on that. Would you give me a
That's
second?
that's good.
and also maybe like learning a lot, like knowing a lot of facts about something, and like wanting to tell people about it.
So being informed and teaching people, that's pretty neat. Something that I find very interesting is that boys used to be the main ones in university and in professional schools, law school, med school, and now boys are 40%. And what I've heard from some of the young women that I've interviewed is that girls and teachers think of boys as troublemakers, lazy, not interested in causes like climate change because they don't consider it cool. And I wonder if you see that at all in terms of girls being more successful, more motivated in school, or that's not part of what you see.
That's not really what I see a lot in school, and I think that might be just maybe one person's perspective on it, or a couple people's of perspectives on that topic, and that uh, maybe they also don't just understand, and like maybe they're not listening to what other boys have to say, and like they do actually also care about climate change, and they do want to participate in school.
We actually talked about that question, Gail. That's one that stumped us a little bit. Like, why I wasn't aware. I guess I've seen articles on the increasing proportion of women in college,
Yeah,
and did you have an
40%, 60%.
yeah? So in I think Helena at Helena's level in middle school, that's not so apparent yet. But what are you finding out about why that is?
Um, Men's liberationists like Warren Farrell say it's because boys hear the future is female.
Um,
Um, girls rule, the galaxy is female. All the T-shirts with the future is female, and also it's also economic. I can make more money going to trade school and becoming an engineer than I can going to a four-year university and majoring in education or whatever. So economics and not having the motivation or something.
I did just read an article this week about how men are less likely to take bags to grocery stores because it felt feminine, it felt homophobic, and we're having a homophobic response to that. It's like
Right.
men get skin cancer more than women do because
Because
they think putting lotion on their
sunscreen.
face is gay as well.
That's right.
So there's some of that, but it is interesting, Gail, that this award that just came out this summer that Helena was a part of, 16 under 16 in STEM,
Mhm.
12 of them were young girls.
That's typical. That's not unusual.
Yeah.
But what's interesting to me, it's such a switch. I mean, there used to be books about how the teachers just dialogue with the boys and girls aren't motivated to go to college. So there's been a major change, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess what we want to aim for is it balance out so there's equal opportunity for everyone. Helena, you said that you're thinking of being an actor, director, working in movies. Are you thinking like documentaries or fiction or science fiction, or what genre would you go into if you could?
Definitely documentary, science fiction, and mostly all the genres. But right now, me and my parents are working on a documentary about uh, my black girlhood and my hair, and so I think that might be like first one of my short films that I've made ever. But yeah, I am writing a lot.
She does write a lot of scripts. It is science fiction based, kind of based on some of the stuff that she consumes. But we wanted to do a documentary. She wants to do a documentary on her black hair and what it's like to be raised in a family where we're not black. Sino is Filipino and I'm white, and hair is so important. So that particular journey in itself is just a compelling journey about the politics of black hair.
Yeah, it's a big deal, and black girls get angry about cultural appropriation when one of the Jenners wore cornrows and stuff. So yeah, it does seem to be a big deal. Um, you also have, as a family, besides being nerds, you have the Donato Sap family values. What are some of those values, and how are they determined?
Um, I've been raised with certain values, and I, well, our first value is to be kind, and um, you might think that is simple, but it isn't. You have to name your values, or else they don't work. You have to leave the house and remind each other every day to be kind, because it is easy to forget once you go out into the world. Be kind when others are not kind. Be kind when you get mad, and be kind when you're not sure what to do. Just be kind. And don't forget to be kind to yourself. We're often really mean to ourselves first, and that's why we don't want to be kind to anyone else either. Always, always be kind to yourself. Our second value is to be bold. Being bold means to think outside the box. It means to ask and not care that you get a yes answer. It means to do the thing that most people would be too shy to do.
What's an example of something that you've done that was really took boldness? Speaking in front of big groups?
Yeah, and definitely crossing boundaries to make other friends.
What could we say a word as kind of a footnote? A lot of people of all ages, their biggest fear is public speaking. They get really nervous. So I'm wondering, how do you prep to give a public speech in school or to some kind of group? How do you get yourself ready to be on stage?
Definitely practicing in front of the people that you know and trust, like your family members and friends.
How do you, like in your speeches, how do you code it so that you know to punch some things here, and what do you do in your preparation? And I think that comes from your Mrs. Geiser, your music and theater teacher.
Yeah, I color code the words, like red means to emphasize, and yellow means to pause, and blue means to slow down, I think.
Yeah, I agree, Gail. Public speaking was a major hurdle for me in higher education, in my own journey, and I didn't get the courage to really do that. Even now, I get nervous, right, on stage until I was in college, and I think Helena's experience. In Helena's experience, she has just been doing it. She's been on stage for since first grade. There's been multiple opportunities at her school to be on stage, and so for her, even though I think you say you still get a little bit nervous,
Yeah, I do.
but it's a little, it's more natural for you to be on stage, and so I just marvel at. I always check in with her, like, how nervous are you? And she'll be like, yeah, 3 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. I'm like, wow, okay. I'm sure it's not my job to make you more nervous, so go for it. But that definitely being in front of people experience. I mean, how many times have you spoken to college classes and adult audiences? You can't count them now, right? No.
When I'm doing I'm a ballroom dancer. When I do a dance performance, before I start, I think of channeling some, like Martha Graham, some famous dancer. So I'm like letting her go through me, so it's not me, it's Martha Graham.
Yeah. That's a strategy.
Yeah. So let's talk about feminism. Do you use that word, womanist, feminist? What word do you use?
I use feminism or feminist. I don't really ever remember a time when I did not identify as a feminist. I've just grown up with that identity. I do know that nearly all of my girl classmates do not identify as feminist, and it has caused conflict here and there for me.
Do they think it means that you hate boys and men if you're a feminist?
Probably some of them, but also just some of them are in conservative families, and that I guess it's just those two things.
My grandson's circle of friends, a lot of the girls, I think not so much the boys, are exploring gender fluidity, being not being binary, but being fluid or demigirl or lesbian. This is at like 10 and 11. So a lot of exploration of alternatives to gender. Do you see that among your peers or not?
Some of them, some of my peers, I do notice that, and I can define myself as I guess gender fluid sometimes because of the certain ways I dress or act or what I do sometimes.
Well, if you think about it, no one is just like 100% male or 100% female. We're all gender fluid. And studies by people like Sandra Bem show that the healthiest people can be flexible, called being androgynous. So if I need to be assertive, I can be assertive. If I need to be nurturant to a little kid, I can be nurturant. So no one's 100%. That would be really weird.
Yeah, we talk about how certain traits and certain roles are assigned, to a gender, and often the conversation is about looking at how accurate that is. Why is nurturing, a female trait? I mean, certainly in this household, if that were true, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
So, we talk about the gendering of roles. If that were true, certain things would never get done in this household. So I think having two dads in the household puts that quickly into perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting because one year Sina was president of the PTA at Helena School. Okay, well, that was an unusual experience for most of the women in the room.
Oh, yeah.
And so, we have blown up a lot of the gender roles just because we're a two-dad family. And, one of your questions was, what has she learned about womanhood from being in our family? It's that, queer partnerships really present equity in the roles that we do at home. We negotiate them all the time. We share them all the time. And she's never had a time when mom did this and dad did that because of the family structure that we're in. So that has busted up a lot of expectations for her. We hope that has busted up expectations for her and who she may or may not partner with when she gets older as well, that there will be a sharing of all labor in the house, you know.
Mm.
Yeah. Helena, do you have different names for your dads, or are they both dad?
This is Dad, this is Papa.
Got it. That makes it easier, so you know who's needed. How do you define feminism to your friends who go, "Oh no, I'm not a bra burner," or whatever they say?
Well,
What does it mean to be a feminist?
it means to try to, like, I guess, speak for women and stand up for them and the girls and, like, of course, boys. And, like, it's not just all women who are feminists. It's, like, all people who want to be feminist or define themselves as feminists. And I think it's just, like, that women and girls are equal to boys and men, too.
Yeah. Yeah, just people. I've been reading about feminist science fiction, and it looks like a major theme in feminist science fiction is alternatives to gender. So they have societies like Marge Piercy's Woman on the Edge of Time, where three people have a parent a baby who's made in a machine, so there's no gender roles. There's a lot of experimenting with what is there besides male roles and female roles. There's hermaphrodites, there's all kinds of variations. There are societies that are matriarchs, and there are societies where the men are oppressed in these feminist science fiction. So you, as a science fiction reader, what do you see that sets feminist science fiction apart from mainstream science fiction, if you thought about that?
Feminist science fiction. I would say that the women would be captains or, like, the lead role, or the main character.
Like 11?
Yeah, like 11.
Mm-hmm.
From Stranger Things, the show.
Yeah, we're big on Star Trek. So, you know, we see a lot of, that's always been part of Star Trek. And so we watch and talk a lot about, even though we were watching, who wrote Sandman?
Neil Gaiman.
Neil Gaiman's Sandman. I don't know, if you've seen that new show, Sandman. It's just beautiful. But even in that one,
Is it a sci-fi show?
it is science fiction. Yeah, and but it was so interesting that Satan, Lucifer, is a woman. It was just interesting, even just the switching of some of those gender roles is so startling.
And it's way more diverse.
It's really diverse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Let's talk about some of the feminist organizing that you've done. So there was a feminist club in your elementary school?
Yes, there was.
And did that exist before you, or did you start it, and what did you contribute to it?
I started it, and it was called Conversations for Justice, but the thing, we kind of had to change the name because from feminist, because some of the parents would, like, get mad. It was feminist. Yeah.
What grade were you in when you started that?
7th grade.
Oh, in 7th grade. And what were some of the topics that people really got into? Like, oh yeah, well, let me tell you this, let me tell you that, my experience.
Do you remember what Julie led or what conversations you all had? What?
It was a list of list of something. I forgot.
The list of topics. Ended up doing one on anti-bullying, and there is just going back to what you were saying earlier about why the girls don't identify as feminists.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this group ended up being called Conversations for Justice to make it less less political. So I don't know if this is true of other middle schools, but they try to kind of iron it out a little bit. They try to kind of depoliticize things that are, sometimes not possible to be depoliticized.
Yeah, they tried to start a gay-straight alliance a couple of years ago.
In the elementary school.
This was it fifth?
K8.
Elementary.
Yeah, and a student, a gay student, had asked for it, and it was pretty explosive. They wanted to not call it the Gay Straight Alliance. Parents wanted to call it a multicultural club, and so that power of getting to name it and who gets to choose who names it is another interesting aspect. But in Helena's situation, her vice principal is super supportive and is a real champion of Helena's activism. But the rest of the school, I'll say, is pretty conservative. And so they got the club in, and it is from Girls Learn International. It's a feminist club. And then they said, we want to call it Conversations for Justice, so that it didn't have the feminist word inside it. So it's been, how do we say when we were kids, one giant step forward, two little steps backwards kind of thing. But she did the charter on her own and did not ask permission. And then after she got the charter for the feminist club, she presented and said, I did this, now you have to do something about it. So it was a little subversive in the way that she got it in there, but now it's in, and it's its second year, and we're hoping that it gets kind of institutionalized in there. And her goal, as one of your questions, Gail, was how does she help younger kids come along, is that she has to figure out which 6th and 7th graders are interested in that club this year, so that when she leaves the school, somebody else will take that on in the future.
I interviewed a young woman who's a climate activist at a Long Beach high school. She's on my YouTube, and that was a big point that she made, is if you graduate, then the conservative just say, oh, they're going to graduate and I won't have to deal with them. So it's really important to nurture what she called the fresh person babies. So that Helena, that's really astute that you keep it going that way. So I'm trying to get at what kind of topics what are they interested in? If you have a conversation club like that, what's on people's minds besides bullying?
I know they did something with gender pronouns at one point because one of the administrators had wanted to use non-gender pronouns in report cards, and people lost their minds about that one as well, Do
you like they, them?
Yeah, it's fairly simple stuff, for those of us who are activists. This seems like just natural stuff now, but it's a fairly conservative area, and so there's been some work on pronouns, there's been some work on bullying, and I don't know, maybe Helena can remember, at one point all the kids in the club, and it was a pretty small club first semester, they had to choose a topic. Like Lily was in it, right? Did you remember what topic she chose that they had to do Yeah, I don't
A
know.
report?
A report or a presentation,
Yeah.
and that was kind of like their culminating thing.
You had
Oh.
conversations about race, and do you remember anything about?
There was a video with someone in a wheelchair, and then there was someone without a wheelchair, and they were like on a step stool to watch a game or something through the fence, and then the person on the wheelchair didn't have a step stool, and so I think it was about like kindness or something. And so I guess later in the video, the person with a step stool or someone, I think maybe built a ramp or something so the person with the wheelchair could see too.
You probably know that image, Gail.
What?
That's that image of they're trying to show equality, and they have the three figures there. It's a fairly common image, but I think really what Helena alludes to is that in our family, we talk about this stuff all of the time, and she has capacity to speak to these issues, to speak publicly about them. She writes about them. We don't get through a TV show without putting it on pause and looking at gender roles. She has a lot of capacity. And then when she goes into spaces where she's doing activism at her school level, most of those kids do not have capacity.
No.
They've not had any conversations. And so it's quite beginning in elementary for us because she has, and it's even true, we had a pretty severe bullying situation last year. And even in working with the school in that bullying situation that Helena experienced, even they said, this is really hard for us to negotiate because we're having to build capacity before we even. So that's one of the harder parts. And one of the things that I think makes her such a natural activist is that in her home, I mean, look at us.
You have the vocabulary, the concepts.
Yeah, we can't go out for a cup of hot chocolate without having to, deal with race, class, gender, sexual orientation, adoption. I mean, we've had people run up and grab Helena. Where's her mother? I'm like,
But
well, right here,
One important lesson that we've learned, all of us, in the work of activism is that people are at different levels. If people have different capacities, when you're in mixed company, you don't know it, not to mention politics, right? Just their ability to talk or willingness to talk about these subjects. And it's important as an activist to know that sometimes you do have to make, you do have to meet people where they are. And it's not going to be called your club isn't going to be called the way you want it called. You're not going to talk about things precisely as you imagined. So I think that's one of the important lessons that we're learning. That's important not just for that school, but for the the civic discourse today. I think it's important to learn where people are at different places, and somehow we all have to meet and be able to talk as human beings to each other.
That's not easy in the era of Trump, that's for sure.
No. There was an article, I bookmarked it. I haven't read it yet. I sent it to myself though, and it was something about like they're already looking at the depolarizing dialogue, and I thought that it was already in the works somehow. That some organization was already working on it. I'm interested in looking at that, and
It's like reconciliation after apartheid in South Africa and all that they did to try to meld the big differences.
That's a good reference.
Yeah, it is.
I think that's the level of conflict that we're at. Yeah.
I do too. So what are all your pronouns?
Oh, my pronouns are she, her.
And I use he, him.
He, him. Yeah.
My grandson uses dragon.
And
I said, are they like female and male dragons, or what? No, dragon.
Another really interesting thing about capacity is that article that Helena just got published on decolonizing her curriculum. And that article is such a fabulous piece because it's the conversation that's been going on in this house since kindergarten, when they had that. At least they didn't call it the Thanksgiving party in November. They called it a fall celebration or something. And her kid, I was like, if we go to that and she's got on a pilgrim hat or paper feathers, I said, I'm just going to lose it. But her kindergarten teacher was a really fierce social justice teacher. And so that was not the case. But we started having those conversations early. Second grade, they loved the boxcar children. But there were no black characters in any of the literature she read. In third grade, she published a book on what it's like to have two queer dads. They wouldn't even celebrate it, not even during Literacy Week, because she was the only published author. In fourth grade, she got to California history, and for the first time then she defined in her own work, colonizing. It was not defined in her classroom. And so, that article is a result of 7 years of conversation.
What I found so disheartening about that article was only the kindergarten teacher was sensitive to these kind of issues, and you had to struggle with every other teacher, Helena, to say, okay, there aren't just white men in history, or let's talk about the missions and what they really did for the Native indigenous people or whatever. So you've been fighting ever since second grade. But it got better, you said, in middle school.
Yeah, sixth grade.
Again, it was single teacher kind of led. We had a fierce social justice teacher in sixth grade, and suddenly all of the books were by authors of color. But then that teacher left the school because it wasn't a safe fit for her.
And then in last year in seventh grade, I had another teacher who was who teach colonized history, and a book that it wasn't really interesting, and it was by a white author. And I was like, everybody in the class didn't really like the teacher, and it was about grades and how he graded, and I was like, I emailed the teacher, and I said that I'm sorry that this happened to you, and so, but I got really, I bonded with that teacher.
You felt sorry for him.
Yeah.
Oh, you were kind to him.
She really was. Yeah, it made a big difference.
Oh.
But it does seem to be teacher, social justice teacher driven. And I will say that, part of our collective impact as a family is that the school is making strides. And I would say that they had a pride celebration for the last 2 years. Shocking. They had the pride flag up.
The sidewalk.
This year they actually all the teachers did some kind of lesson that, who knows what the lesson was like, but some kind of lesson on June and Pride Month. And they are trying to, decolonize the curriculum. But again, to be blunt, she's more sophisticated than a lot of folks.
Yeah. Right. Helena, for people who don't really know what it means to decolonize the curriculum, what does that mean?
It means to tell what really happened in history, and the things like colonizations or who found this land first. There was many people way before Columbus who actually founded the land, and then he killed them and claimed that he found it, which he didn't. And so it's just these textbooks are wanting to protect children from what really happened in history, like from the truth, but they're not really protecting us. They're not really also preparing us for like the future in the world, and then it's like it makes things a lot worse.
I love this quote about ageism. You said, "Don't dumb things down for us because we are capable, more capable than you are telling us right now with the false things you teach us. Don't underestimate us and don't protect us, prepare us." I think that's so crucial. I wrote a book called Ageism and Youth Studies, and I wrote that book because I was so astounded that all the experts in youth studies rarely talked to youth. They relied on multiple choice surveys, computer driven stuff, but they didn't sit down and talk to them. And so that's why I think someone like Jane Twenge didn't know it's not just social media. It's not sleeping enough. It's a pressure to perform because they don't actually talk to people. And I thought there's no other discipline where if you're studying African American, you wouldn't talk to African Americans. And Jeff, you teach education, so you must see this ageism as well play out.
Well, it's where Helena started her speaking jumps right there.
In your classes?
Came into my classroom and would talk and present, and I'd question her about what is kindergarten like? Tell me about what's your favorite teacher? Why are they your favorite teacher? And then as she began to build kind of a body of work, and not only scholarly work, but activism work, a colleague in liberal studies who teaches elementary, kind of the elementary multicultural education course, started having Helena come in, and that's where she defined the topic, kids can tackle tough topics. And she started speaking to elementary teachers, don't think we can't talk about race and all of this. But Gail, Helena, one of our family values is to be bold. And Helena pitched, stuff will come across my desk and I'll say, look at this, Helena, here's a book on strong black girls. And so she pitched something. And they were so beautifully welcoming, really welcoming.
Who's they?
The women who were doing this scholarly book.
Oh.
The black women. And they invited her in, and but it was really funny because everyone was like, we have a book on strong black girls, and we actually have a strong black girl. It was novel, right? It was a novel thing. Spoke at AERA this past year, and that's one of the things she said. She told the whole entire audience, "Where are the youth speakers? You're speaking about us, not letting us speak."
And also in the lobby when we were getting in, they thought that my parents were speaking, and my parents were like, "She's speaking," and they were like, "Oh," and then they were like, giving me bags for free or something.
The swag.
They couldn't understand that we were just. We were the entourage. Yeah, that's right. She got a standing ovation at AERA because she was like, if you're here talking about students, but there are no students here.
That blows me away.
Yeah, she's with you, Gail. She's in solidarity with you.
There's actually an artist years ago, Gail, based in Chicago, who had this work around art, the art world, and children being objects and not contributors. And so that was Helena's first public work. Actually, was a piece of art.
A mango.
A mango that she in kindergarten that was created when she was in first or second grade. And my whole point is the project was called Seen and Heard. And it spoke to exactly what you're saying. We like to talk about children and youth without including their voices. And so this artist's whole premise was we're going to have an exhibit by Children for Children, and that was Helena's first participation in this dialogue that you're alluding to here.
Yeah.
Beautiful mango.
A beautiful
That's
mango.
right.
So in terms of feminist organizations, you did the feminist club that's not called Feminist Club, and you're on the Feminist Focus blog team, and you tried to start a gay-straight alliance but weren't allowed to. What am I leaving anything out in terms of kind of organizational group activism that you've been involved with?
What's it, New Moon Girls?
New Moon Girls magazine.
Yeah, New Moon Girls magazine. All of the work for that magazine.
What have you done for them?
I have talked about my being a black girl in my hair, and
So you wrote an article on black girl hair,
yeah,
and then what was your other article on
uh,
vaccines?
vaccines.
Sorry.
Was it women and vaccines?
Vaccines then and now.
Oh yeah.
So she's a reporter. She got selected to be a reporter for that magazine. All the articles are written by preteen girls, for preteen girls. They decide the topics, they do the art, the design. And they're the ones that gave us the concept of shared power, that we support Helena in her work and to grow her in her work.
You're the
And
entourage.
so- Right.
We're the
Yeah,
entourage.
we are.
Very important entourage.
Yeah. Girls Learn International, which is from the Feminist Majority Foundation, have been extremely supportive of her work. New Moon Girls have been really supportive. Several of the coalitions of Black women scholars have been really supportive. I think she refers to those women as her academic aunties. And so those are the organizations, I think primarily that
are feminist organizations.
Yeah.
Explicitly feminist organizations. Although she did, one of her recognitions recently, Gail, was from Diversability, and it had to do with her work in disability justice. And although they're not, it's not per se a feminist organization, it's it's a diverse. It's based on diversity in the world, in the in the disability community. So they're explicitly seeking out diverse voices in that organization.
And I think they might declare themselves as feminists.
Absolutely.
Disability justice was started by Black disabled women.
Are they local, national? What's their range?
It's a global organization.
Disability justice.
Diversability is what it's called.
Yeah.
Is it 2 words or one?
One.
Oh, okay.
It's a melding of the 2 words.
Got it.
Yeah.
And Helena, what do you write for them, or what do you do for them?
We nominated her for they have an award called the D30 Impact List, and so she was one of some 250 nominees from around the world. This is the 3rd year they've done this award, and they narrow it down to like 100 nominees, and then a group of global folks from that organization, actually who won the award last year, call through those nominations, and they choose 30 people around the world who are really making an impact. And Helena was one of the 30 this year.
Whoa. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it has to do with, trying to have more conversations about her own learning disabilities with pride. She lifts her head up when she does it, with pride, no shame around it, and advocating for herself as a way to advocate for other children.
It seems to me that we all have some kind of disability. Like I'm spatially challenged, couldn't get geometry. So it seems we all have strengths and weaknesses because we're human.
Right. In the school setting, it's interesting because we get diagnosed in the school setting. So Helena has ADHD, she has dyscalculia, she has a working memory. We are requested at times to do these psychoeducational evaluations if a child is struggling. Many people won't do them, so their child might continue to struggle and not know why. We decided, as an educator, I just said, if our child has learning disabilities, all that means is that we will get introduced to a new, loving community.
And that is indeed what has happened.
That is what has happened.
Helena got an invitation to speak at a speaker series for San Jose State University, and she became the first youth speaker just by telling her story in schooling. So that was one of her. She's an emerging scholar in the field of disability justice, and has already made some impact. She's already been cited, Gail.
I'm sure that decolonizing education will get cited a lot. Yeah.
We had another article this year published in Equity and Excellence in Education. And that article kind of led to this keynote invitation. So,
and I also had the first news article about me.
Oh, yeah, you got a news article.
John Fensterwald.
What news avenue?
Education's.
EdSource.
EdSource.
It was a journal.
I think it was a blog. I think it was maybe an
online
blog post, but it was after she was named one of 16 under 16 in STEM, and this must be a Southern California branch because they highlighted the 3 people from California.
Got it.
That had been in that list.
So would you excel in STEM, Helena, because you do well in math, science, or what's that connection?
It's science and.
But why did they think that you were a leader in STEM?
Like from my love of science, like I made a cell cake. That was really fun.
A what kind of cake?
A cell cake, like the blue animal cell.
And you mean like cells in our body kind of cells?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
She made it as a cake and took it to her class so she had all the parts of the cell in there and stuff.
It's the award really was looking at her body of work. As an elementary student, she's leaned on technology and video to demonstrate comprehension in science. But more than that, I think they also looked at, her use of autoethnography in the social sciences, kind of being familiar with some research methodology. It's actually her. A lot of times the award focuses on one achievement or like a genius kind of product or app. In Helena's case, I think they looked at her body of work and the criteria. There were 3 criteria for this award. One is creativity, being a disruptor. One is
resilience.
And so they also looked at her learning differences and how she's overcome them and become quite a great student and a lover of science. So that's why it's kind of a mouthful to kind of go, actually mathematics is very challenging.
Because she has
dyscalculia. And so that is actually something we try to articulate. How do you connect being a STEM awardee and being a person with disabilities, with learning disabilities.
Before we go on, Jeff, what does AERA stand for?
AERA in the field of teacher education, the American Educational Research Association, some people would consider that the Cadillac of conferences. Not all of us feel that way, but it's a very prestigious conference, and it's one that if you're on tenure track,
you go.
Which she is. She can go up for tenure now, I think. It's one that you want on your resume. So it's a large national research conference. And so for her to get accepted and present to a standing ovation was quite a feat.
Yes.
In my field.
Yes, good. Helena, if you had to choose now, which luckily you don't, what would be your ideal university? I'm assuming that you're going to go to university.
College.
Yeah.
For college, I would definitely choose Smith because a lot of my aunties.
Smith.
Oh, what? Yeah.
She's got Smith on.
Because a lot of my aunties go there, but I'm also interested in the New York Film Academy too, because it's film, and my friend Andres goes there.
And UCLA is a good film school too, right? In case you want to stay home.
We'd vote for that. Yeah, UCLA is good.
No Stranger Things. Where did the Duffer Brothers go?
Chapman University.
Chapman University is right here in Orange County.
Yeah.
They're a pretty good film school now.
Oh, I didn't know that it was a film school. So, Helena, for the girls, I want to come back to the young people who go, I'm not a feminist. What would you say to them now about why you don't have to be afraid? You can embrace that label.
Well, they can definitely choose if they want to be a feminist or not. Or I think there's definitely other ways of supporting women and girls and not just being a feminist, I guess.
Well, you can do it without using the label, right?
Yeah.
Helena wrote a bunch of women in her life of all ages. You probably really love this. This was about a couple of years ago. She has some pen pal girlfriends. She wrote them. What does feminist mean to you? She wrote her aunties, her cousins, all the women in her life. And they all wrote her letters back. And so we've been trying to synthesize that.
And what was the point of the letters?
We're just researchers, and we just wanted to know what the women in our life of different ages and races, classes, we wanted to know what they thought feminism was.
Do you consider yourself feminist?
Oh, wow. What Helena, what answers did you get?
I think some were womanists.
Black women tend to be womanists.
Right,
Yeah.
and so that's something for us to explore further, what womanism means to her. That was the point that I was going to make, so of course you
and also sisterhood, something like that.
Did you have any that said, I'm not that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so
remember
either.
that either.
And,
Yeah, we're really interested in the concept of sisterhood because with coalitions of black women that she scholarships with, they always talk about sisterhood. And what did you say when you got off one of the calls once? What did you say about?
It makes me feel weird, kind of.
Why does the term sisterhood make you feel weird?
It's just like we all like know each other somehow. I just don't like it really.
because you didn't feel like they're really your sisters?
Yeah.
It was I think a concept that she hadn't she hadn't really heard before, and it was being applied very intimately.
Yeah, and it's like some people I don't know.
Yeah.
And also, part of the bullying situation at school, Gail, is that Helena's class has always had a super strong mean girl clique. And so she hadn't really experienced sisterhood even among her classmates, which is why she ended up at a table of boys and being really good friends with them. And so that's a research topic that she's going to explore next, is what exactly is.
What does it mean?
When does it start? Because she hasn't felt it yet.
Wow. Do the mean girls, does that mean they only talk to themselves and ignore other people, or what's mean about the mean girls?
They exclude you. They don't really invite you to things, and like they're very.
They're very what?
They're very,
Stop it, Bella. I'm sorry, my dog was making noise. They're very what?
Secretive.
Oh, it's like,
So there's a lot of it.
oh, that. Oh, and
And then
did you know that this, I think that loosens up, certainly by college. I think it gets better.
I agree.
We tell her it gets better.
because people are more mature.
Yes. Yeah.
And unfortunately, younger kids kind of get locked into who they are, and when she switches schools, I think we will see a freeing of that. We're hoping.
And on Vistamar's website, one of the schools that I'm trying to apply to now, it says 80-something% friendly of students.
But 20% are not friendly.
That's promising. That's a promising statistic.
We'll
I don't
take
know
it.
about that.
We'll take it. 80%. Thank you.
You know, that amazes me that still in high school you have like the preppies, the jocks, the theater people, I don't know, maybe in my community, the Hmongs, the Hispanics, and that you just see people sitting with their little group at lunch. Is that different for you, Helena, now in LA, or what's the deal with self-segregating?
Well, I guess at my school, it is that, like, especially with my friends who are boys. They're all boys, and I was the only girl there. And I guess I don't think anything. I mean, there was some groups that were different, like the mean girls, and also the people, the more, I guess, political people groups.
Yeah, I think that's wow, Gail. That's a big question.
Yeah.
I think people self-segregate for many, many different reasons. Some of them, sure, it can be viewed as excluding and stuff. But I tend to think that a lot of the reasons that people self-segregate are for safety reasons, for just cultural affinities are definitely valid. I think just because coming from an immigrant standpoint, one of the areas that I saw as safe were those groups that kind of looked like me and were able to help me transition into a broader society. People who've been here and were also immigrants, and it wasn't at all exclusive. I mean, everyone was welcome, but I think if you're a marginalized group, definitely it's a safety issue. It's it's kind of a home. So
That makes sense.
But I know for that answer is going to be different for every person that you ask, because Why would you segregate as boys, or why would you segregate as jocks? I think those are all different answers.
Okay. So, Helena, 10 years from now, you'll be 23. You'll be finishing college. What do you see yourself doing 10 years from now?
I hope to be doing something in film and TV and using all of my multiple identities to help Hollywood be more inclusive.
So your multiple identities are girl, black, disability advocate. Is that accurate in your multiple identities?
What else though?
Also, being in a multiracial family and having two queer dads.
Being dark-skinned black
Yeah.
is something as well.
And what about the hair thing? Why is that such a big deal for a black girl?
I think it's a big deal.
Is your hair natural?
Yeah, my hair is natural.
But you have it braided, right?
In locks.
And so it's twisted rather than braided?
Yeah, it's locked. It's what's called locked. She has locks. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a whole field of scholarship.
There is a whole field of scholarship on black hair.
Oh, wow.
But
Yes.
because what you're talking, yeah, there's a whole field of scholarship on black hair. I'll just say that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh. And the message is what? That it's we have different kinds of hair, so get used to it. We have different kinds of hair.
I think it's more than that. I think hair has had different significant meanings throughout history, and I don't really want to speak on black hair. We're just learners.
Yeah.
As her parents.
Right.
But we do know enough that it is a big field of scholarly inquiry, and that it has meaning that goes beyond what we might imagine. So in the black experience, it figures I say in significant ways. And I can cite examples that I know, but again, I'm not a black scholar, and I'm just a learner. So ask me maybe in 10 years. I might be able to tell you a little bit more.
Ask your black women friends more
Yes,
so.
yeah.
Right. Helena, I don't want to keep you any longer. What have we left out, though, that you want people to know about young feminist activists, how to get things done? Is the future female?
I want people to know that they should just be themselves, and even though they have like different identities, they can make a change in the world, and that they're important as a human being.
But what about people who don't have supportive parents like you do? I mean, it's been hard for you, but you have your entourage, and a lot of kids would have parents who say, "Shh, we don't talk about this stuff." How can they get support?
They can get support from maybe family members, their friends, or their teachers, or other people at school, or at the sports they do.
So has martial arts been important for you?
Yeah, it's been very important because it definitely makes me feel safer as a girl and as a black person, and that it's important to protect yourself.
Yeah, that's nice to know someone could come at you and you go, could you do that at this point?
I pick them.
Okay.
She's so inspired. She so inspires with the love of karate that Sino and I joined her, and so we all three do it together now.
Wonderful. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Helena, can you take them down?
Oh yes, absolutely. She's way higher. She's way higher and more sophisticated than me.
For the record, I just want to say to honor our dojo, the value of the dojo is self-defense in its truest form. And so the first stand scale is not kicking them, actually, it's parrying. It's being able to deflect
And also,
violence.
like with your hands up and like backing away and saying, I don't want to get involved in this fight.
Yes.
The key concept is knowledge over power. So we like that. It really the values of the dojo are really coincide well with the values of our family.
I'll say. So, dads, anything else you want to add in terms of how to raise a feminist girl child?
Lots of conversation, I mean, you talk about periods and pads. We didn't have a woman to negotiate that. So we've had to get in there and learn what a lot of things that a lot of dads would not learn or did not learn.
He can do makeup.
I can do
He can do makeup, I can do hair. And so it really is letting go of a lot of gender rigidity and gender policing.
Yeah.
And but it's lots of conversation. And anytime, I remember when we had talks about sex, she was like, I'm a little uncomfortable. I said, that's great. I said, that just means we need to have more talks so that you're not uncomfortable with it. So lots of conversation, lots of trust.
It's the world will have you feel shame about just about anything about yourself. And one of the biggest challenges in raising a confident child is talking about that shame and the shaming that happens. And so, being queer certainly helped in that regard. We have experience in trying to be shamed.
Yeah.
The world. And so, this realization dawned on me early on that one of our biggest jobs as parents is to be able to protect and talk about shame, but lift up the shame that the world will have you feel for all your identities. And in Helena's case, she confronts that by telling her stories and her experiences.
And I would have her end our time together by actually answering your question to us, last family value, and I would love for her to share our last family value.
Our last family value is very important and very dear to us. For as long as I've been alive, I have never once heard a negative thing in my home about my body. We are not allowed to say anything negative, anything about anyone's body, unless it is to tell them that they are beautiful and perfect.
Oh.
It is one of our most strict values. We are not allowed to speak negatively about our own bodies either. And if we forget and say a mean thing to ourselves, we go to the bathroom mirror, we look ourselves in the eyes, and we say, I am sorry, body, I love you, body. And then we go and love ourselves better, and loving ourselves better helps us love each other better.
I want to cry. That's so beautiful. That's a good note to end on.